That night, I learned something nobody teaches you in driver's ed. The rain can be loud, but fear is louder. All it took was one flashing blue light in my mirror to turn me from a tired nurse into a target. And yeah, I'm going to say it straight, if I hadn't made one phone call, my little boy might not be sleeping under my roof today. I was coming off a double shift at St. Jude's Memorial Scrubs, still smelling like antiseptic and burnt coffee, hands aching from lifting patients and smiling through chaos, you know what I mean? The kind of shift where you keep telling yourself, just get to the car, just get home, just kiss your kid and breathe. Oak Creek looked like a watercolor that night, all smeared streetlights and wet pavement. The kind of small town where people love to brag about how safe it is, but the safety has conditions. And if you've lived it, you already know the conditions. I'm black, I'm alone. And it was after midnight, so in their heads I wasn't just driving, I was up to something before anybody even asked my name. I checked the speedometer, 34 in a 35 seatbelt on phone, face down, both hands on the wheel like I'm taking a test. And then the cruiser pulled in tight behind me, spotlight blasting my rear view so hard my eyes watered, and I felt that familiar drop in my stomach, the one that says, don't move wrong, don't talk wrong, don't breathe wrong. I rolled the window down a crack and put my hands where they could see them, rain soaking my forearm, and I waited 1 minute, 2, 3. That waiting is the first little cruelty, like they want you to simmer in your own panic until you're soft enough to shape. Then I saw him step out of the glare, tall, thick neck, buzz cut, that cocky walk that says he enjoys being the scariest thing on your street. Officer Brett Sterling. Everybody in Oak Creek knew Sterling, not because he was some hero, but because he was the guy who could turn a broken taillight into a week of misery and then smile about it at the diner. He didn't say good evening, didn't say ma'am, just leaned in like the window was his property and said license and registration like he was ordering food. I kept my voice polite because polite is armor. Good evening, officer. May I reach into the glove box? His hand settled on his holster like a reminder, and I could smell tobacco and wet asphalt. He snatched my documents like I was handing him a weapon. Then his flashlight went straight to the back seat, swept over Leo's empty booster seat, came back to my face, and he smiled. Not friendly, more like he found a weak spot. You look tired, Maya, he said. Reading my name like it tasted funny. You on something? I almost laughed because it was so absurd. And then I didn't because nothing about him felt like a joke. I'm a nurse officer. I just got off a double, and he leaned closer, voice low. Nurse. Huh. Access to a lot of meds. That's the moment I knew he wasn't fishing. He was writing a story, and he was already decided I'd play the villain. Step out of the vehicle, he said, and I tried one last time to be a person. Officer, it's pouring rain. Why did you pull me over? His voice snapped. I said, step out now. And when I opened the door, the cold rain hit like needles. Mud sucked at my shoes, and he spun me around and slammed me against my own car hard enough to knock the breath out. Stop resisting. He barked loud for the dash cam, even though my hands were flat on the door. I wasn't resisting anything except the urge to scream. He patted me down, rough, lingering, too long, too hard, like he wanted to punish me for existing. Dug into my pockets, took my phone and keys, then stepped back and held up a tiny baggie of white powder like he'd just found gold. I felt my face go numb. That's not mine. And he laughed that hollow, mean laugh. You accusing an officer of the law? That's a felony, ma'am. Then he said the words that cut deeper than the metal on my skin. Possession in a school zone. Looks like little Leo might be going to foster care. Something inside me cracked, not into bravery, into pure panic. Don't talk about my son, and he leaned in so close I could feel his breath through the rain. Then learn your place. This is my town. You just pay rent. Here's what people don't get. He didn't arrest me. He could have, but he wanted me alive and afraid. He wrote citations like they were love letters to his own power, broken tail light, resisting some made-up warning, then tossed my license into the mud and strolled back to his cruiser like he'd just watered a plant. Get it fixed, Maya. I'll be watching. I stood there shaking so hard my teeth chattered, picking up my license out of the muck, and I drove away with my throat tight, and I didn't cry until I was miles down the road. And when I did, it wasn't pretty. It was that ugly cry scream that comes out when you realize you can do everything right and still be treated like a suspect in your own life. The next morning, sunlight came in like normal birds and all that, but my kitchen felt like a courtroom where I was already sentenced. I stared at those citations, $1,200, that's rent, That's groceries, that's Leo's shoes. And then Leo padded in with his hair sticking up, rubbing his eyes. Mama, pancakes, and I smiled like I wasn't drowning. Yeah, baby, pancakes. And I covered the papers with a towel because kids shouldn't have to see grown-up fear. I dropped him at school, checking my mirror every few seconds, and when I got to the hospital, my supervisor called me in. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in a day. Maya, we got a call from the sheriff's department. They're asking about missing narcotics. I swear the floor tilted. What? You know me? And she sighed. I do, but Officer Sterling said they found residue in your car last night. He recommended we suspend you pending an investigation. I felt heat rush up my neck. He planted it and she whispered, It's out of my hands. Unpaid leave, just like that. No paycheck, no shift, no dignity. I walked out with $400 in my account and a target on my back. When I got home, there was a cruiser across the street. Not Sterling this time, his partner, Deputy Miller, sunglasses on, engine running, watching my door like he was waiting for a show, and it didn't stop. 2 days later, I came home from the grocery store and my front door was unlocked. My heart started hammering. I pushed it open, and my house had been tossed, drawers yanked out, clothes scattered. But the TV was still there, the laptop still there. What they broke was the family stuff. The photos, Leo's pictures frames smashed so glass glittered across the floor, and on the kitchen counter, a note on a napkin. Time to move. I called it in because that's what you do. You try to believe the system, and guess who showed up to take the report? Sterling, strolling through my wrecked living room like he was inspecting a rental, kicking aside a broken frame with Leo's face in it. Rough neighborhood, he said, not writing a thing down, and I finally said it, voice shaking with rage. I want to file a complaint. I want to speak to the chief. Sterling chuckled like I'd told a cute joke. The chief. He's my godfather, sweetheart. Go ahead. Call him. Tell him Brett was mean to you. Then he stepped closer, towering in my own kitchen, and his voice got quiet, intimate, like a threat meant just for me. You got 2 choices. Pack up and leave Oak Creek by the end of the week, or we find something in this house that puts you in a cage for 10 years. And Leo, he paused, let the word hang. He goes to the state. My back hit the counter. I felt like the walls were shrinking. Get out of my house, I said, and he smiled. Tick-tock, Maya. After he left, I locked every lock and slid down to the floor, sobbing until my throat burned because I understood it. Then the system wasn't broken. It was working exactly how Sterling wanted it to work, and I was trapped inside his little kingdom with no money for a lawyer, no badge, no protection, just a child sleeping in the next room who trusted me to keep him safe. I stared at my phone for a long time, thumb hovering over one contact I'd avoided for years, a single letter D, my brother Darius, the man who missed birthdays and holidays. The man whose life was the shadowy kind you don't bring around kids, the kind you pretend doesn't exist because it's easier. But that night, I didn't need a brother. I needed a wall. I hit call. It rang once, twice, then click, and his voice came through like gravel, calm, steady, like he'd been waiting Maya. And that was it. That was my breaking point, Darius. I need help, I said. And I hated how small my voice sounded. They're gonna take Leo. Silence on the line, thick and heavy, and when he spoke again, it felt like the room got colder. Who? I swallowed. Police, a man named Sterling. They're watching me. They broke in. He's threatening Leo. Darius didn't ask for drama, didn't ask if I was exaggerating. He asked one thing, are you safe right now? I'm home, I whispered, but they're outside. Lock the door, close. The blinds, put the phone away after this, he said like he was giving instructions for a storm. I'm coming. I said, Darius, you're not even here. You've been gone, and he answered. Not anymore. 12 hours. I started to say, please don't do anything crazy, and he cut in softer. Tell Leo. Uncle D is coming home, and the line went dead. Those 12 hours were torture. I sat with the blinds drawn, jumping at every car sound, holding a kitchen knife in my lap like it could protect me from a badge. Oak Creek had always been quiet, but in my head, it became a cage, a place where silence wasn't peaceful. It was predatory. Late morning, the rumble of a big truck rolled down the street, slow and heavy. A black pickup pulled into my driveway like it owned the gravity in the air across the street. Miller sat up, reached for his radio, and inside my house I peeked through the blinds and saw the driver's door open. Tan boots hit the concrete, then dark jeans, a gray hoodie, broad shoulders, and a man moving like he was scanning a hostile zone, not walking into a suburban driveway. I opened the door before he knocked. Darius stood there taller than I remembered. Harder too. A scar down his jaw, eyes dark and awake like sleep was optional. And the first thing he said wasn't a hug, it was get inside. He stepped past me, locked the door, checked windows, checked back exits, and only then, only for a second the brothers surfaced, he pulled me into a hug that felt like iron and I fell apart against him. They took my job. I choked. They're gonna take Leo, and Darius held me, but his eyes stayed open, staring like he was doing math. They aren't taking anyone, he said low, certain. He saw the broken frames, the torn photo of Leo, and his voice went flat. Who did this? I told him, and he nodded like he was labeling a file. Then he looked out at Miller across the street and cracked his knuckles quiet but sharp. Make coffee, he said, and I grabbed his arm. Darius, he has a gun, and for the first time a tiny smirk touched his mouth. So do I. He walked out like he had all the time in the world, straight to the cruiser. Miller rolled his window down with that cop swagger. Can I help you? Darius leaned in close enough that even from my window I could see Miller's confidence flicker. You're blocking the driveway, Darius said, calm, and Miller started to puff up, started to step out, and Darius put one hand on his chest and shoved him back into the seat like he weighed nothing. Not a punch, not a brawl, just a statement. And then Darius spoke, soft, deadly. Call Sterling. Tell him Maya's got family in town. Tell him if I see a police car on this street again, I won't be polite. He took Miller's sunglasses, crushed them in one hand, dropped the pieces in his lap. Drive. And yeah, Miller drove tires, squealing like his body finally believed the message his ego didn't want to accept. Back inside my kitchen table turned into something else. Darius opened a rugged laptop, made calls I didn't understand, and he showed me proof that Sterling's paycheck didn't match his lifestyle. Offshore accounts, steady deposits. He's not just a bully, Darius said. He's moving product, I said. So we call the FBI because that's what the good citizen in me still wanted to believe, and Darius gave this dry little laugh. FBI builds cases. Sterling burns lives, we do this my way. What's your way? I asked, and he said, make him scared, make him sloppy, then crush the machine behind him. And something in me hated how that sounded. And something else, the part of me that had been cornered for days, felt relief. Later, Darius went to the bar where Oak Creek PD drank off-duty, and I wasn't there, but he told me what happened, and the way he told it, I could see it, like a movie. Sterling laughing with his buddies, acting like he owned the world. Then Darius walking in and the room going quiet because predators recognize other predators. Sterling puffing up. You the guy who put hands on my deputy, and Darius answering like he was bored. Officer Sterling, I hear you like to bully women. You got the same energy for a man. Sterling trying to laugh it off. Then Darius dropping details. He shouldn't know money shipment secrets, and Sterling's face draining like someone pulled a plug. Darius leaving him with one line. You got 24 hours before your world ends, and then walking out while everyone watched because nobody wanted to be the first one to move. That should have been the end, right? The warning, the pressure, the fear. But Sterling was the kind of man who doesn't stop when he's challenged. He escalates because if he backs down, once his whole myth collapses. That night, the phone signal in my house got weird. The air felt wrong, and Darius sat in the dark like he was listening to a song only he could hear. And then it happened. Men came in. Not local cops, not kids, professionals. And my blood ran cold because I realized this was bigger than a traffic stop, and I don't want to glamorize it. I don't, but I'll tell you the truth. Darius moved like a ghost, fast and quiet, and those men ended up zip-tied on my kitchen floor while my son slept with headphones on in the bathroom, and I sat there shaking, not because I wanted violence, but because I understood we'd crossed a line you don't uncross. One of them finally admitted Sterling paid them and that there was a shipment moving that night at the rail yard, and that's the twist right there, because up until then I thought this was about racism and harassment and one corrupt cop with a god complex, but it was about money, drugs, power, and the kind of local corruption that puts on a uniform during the day and runs business at night. Darius decided we weren't running anymore. He told me to pack a bag and we left like fugitives, except we were the ones who'd been attacked. At the rail yard, hidden lights, trucks, armed guards. It looked like a small private army, and Darius found Sterling in the center of it, but Sterling wasn't alone. There was a man in a nice raincoat too clean for the mud, a state senator, Clive Reynolds, shaking hands like this was a ribbon cutting. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's not just the cops, it's the suits too. It's the people who make speeches about law and order while they poison their own towns. Darius got proof, real proof, and the whole place blew into chaos when Sterling panicked. And I'm not going to play war correspondent here. I'm a nurse. I'm a mom. I'm telling you what it felt like. It felt like the world finally showed its true face, the one you don't see at the town parade. When it looked like Darius was cornered, when the odds felt impossible, a black helicopter dropped into that rail yard, like judgment unmarked operators moving with discipline, and the power dynamic flipped so hard it felt unreal. The senator was pulled out of his armored comfort and into the mud. Sterling's people were restrained, and suddenly the wolves were the ones looking over their shoulders. 48 hours later, federal agents raided Oak Creek PD at dawn. Chiefs in pajamas got marched out in cuffs, the whole department put under review, and I sat on my porch holding a folder that said every charge against me was dismissed, expunged, wiped, like it never happened. And then the agent handed me a check from asset forfeiture, $250,000, and my hands shook again. Not from fear this time, but from the sheer weight of freedom, because that money wasn't just repairs. It was rent without dread. It was groceries without counting pennies. It was Leo's future not hanging by a thread. The agent looked at me and said something I still think about. According to official records, your brother is stationed overseas and has been for months. He doesn't exist in Oak Creek. And she smiled that tight professional smile that says, we're not going to talk about the messy parts out loud. A year later, Oak Creek had a community center wing funded by an anonymous donor, kids running balloons on the walls. Leo laughing so loud you'd think the world had always been kind. And I stood at a podium and told the crowd what I'd learned. That being normal doesn't make you safe. That silence doesn't protect you. That sometimes the smallest voice shakes the ground when it calls the right person. And I saw Darius in the back near the exit, baseball cap, low half in shadow, and he nodded once, just a small nod, and then he disappeared again like he'd never been there. Now here's the part that's going to split people in the comments, and I want it to because it's real. Was Darius an angel? Or was he a threat? Because he saved us, yes, but he also brought a level of force into a small town that most people only see on TV. And if the system had worked like it was supposed to, none of that would have been necessary. So who do you blame? The brother who showed up, or the badge that pushed a mother so far she had to call a ghost? Because let me tell you, I didn't want a war. I wanted pancakes and bedtime stories and a normal life. But Sterling and his buddies decided my place. And when they threatened my child, they turned me into someone who would do anything to keep him safe. So I'm asking you honestly, if you were me, a single mom framed in the rain job, taken house, violated, child threatened, would you trust the system to fix itself? Or would you make the call you swore you'd never make? And do you think it's justice when the powerful finally fall? Or is it just another kind of danger? When people handle things outside the rules? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you land on right versus wrong, on prejudice, on power, on what law and order really means. When the law is the one holding the gun. And if you've ever witnessed something like this, even a smaller version, share it, because you never know who's reading and feeling alone. And if you want more stories like this, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell me this. Have you ever been underestimated in a way that changed you? And what did you do when you realized nobody was coming to save you but you? Yeah, that happened, and I'm still here to talk about it.